Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Newsflash, and we have a very special episode for you here today because joining me, I have obviously writer at Jacobin and author of Bigger Than Bernie with Megan Day, who literally wrote the book about what to do after the tough Bernie loss and really laying out the future groundwork. So I'm very, very pleased to have Micah Uetricht on to talk to today and about a variety of things. So, Micah, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We can start a little bit with some non-quote-unquote Bernie-related news and talk a little bit about the coronavirus. And the CDC has just recently outlined two ways to shorten recommended quarantine times for people exposed to the virus. But that is, it's very nice for that. But there are kind of a lot of political issues that are at play and will be at play with the relief and the vaccine. First, I do want to start by asking, like, what has been your kind of read on the government response, especially kind of from the Democratic side, and what is the outlook for future possible relief, maybe in a Biden administration, from what you understand?
To me, it's totally insane that the Democratic Party has not been leading a robust campaign and robust demands for significant economic relief. I mean, you can't say, of course, that the Democrats have done nothing on this front, but it blows my mind that, for example, Joe Biden did not stake his entire presidential campaign on the fact that Americans are desperately hurting right now across the board. You name it. You know, even though the worst of the recession is over, it's still a crushing recession right now. It's still crushing levels of unemployment. People are struggling to make basic payments like rent. I mean, we all know the statistics about the state of American economic inequality before the coronavirus pandemic, and now it's just been so much worsened by this. And you would think that the ostensibly left party of a country would be the ones who are beating the drum, saying we are going to provide you with robust economic aid, and the Democrats have not done that, and that's astonishing, and we should really be wondering why that is the case. I assume we're going to be seeing some kind of significant economic relief coming, certainly once Biden takes office in 2021, and there are obviously proposals floating around right now for new relief measures, but it's still shocking to me the timidity with which the Democratic Party is approaching this question, and that it wasn't central to every single Democrat's campaigning, at least on a national level, in the last election cycle.
Yeah, it really has been quite apparent how much of the away from substantive issues the Democrats have, especially with Joe Biden being at the top of the ticket, have campaigned on. Do you worry that, like, some of this, for example, the $908 billion of relief package that's been floated by, I believe, a compromise of Susan Collins and Joe Manchin, do you believe like packages like that go far enough to really address some of the most important and kind of like biggest problem areas that are in the American economy right now? And what would be some of like the biggest ones to focus? Like, what are the best, in your mind, suggestions for like fair, equitable relief to restart the economy?
Well, what I would suggest is basically what is being put forward right now by people like Cori Bush and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar. I mean, the list is not complicated. There should be comparable monthly payments to all workers, such that they do in places like throughout Europe. Hold people, let people hold their jobs so that they don't have to be unemployed, and there's not this wrenching upheaval in the economy. You know, Bernie Sanders proposed $2,000 monthly payments. That seems the bare minimum for what people should be getting right now. Forgiveness of rent and mortgage payments, student loan forgiveness, even though we're not currently paying on our student loans. The clock is ticking for when that's going to restart. And Joe Biden is proposing some amount of student debt relief, but I'm very worried. I mean, for example, I think that the current proposal is $10,000 student debt relief in the new proposed aid package. That's a decent start, but I have a real worry on his ability to go beyond that, which we all know is what desperately needed right now. I mean, the list of things that need to be done on this front is not difficult to come up with, and there are plenty of solid proposals being advanced by left elected officials, and plenty to look to in Europe and much of the rest of the world about what good economic relief should look like. But that's never something that the Democrats have indicated any willingness to do, which is, I suppose, why I'm grateful that we have a handful of left elected officials now at the national level who are willing to put those demands forward. But we're not anywhere near actually being able to win those kinds of demands anytime soon.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it would be a lot more, just even politically, at the bare minimum, sensible for Democrats to try and push some more of an aggressive relief plan. We know why the Republicans don't. They were really in power for the whole crisis, and they're, of course, trying to not really serve the working man or the average American. But what would you say is the political incentive for people like Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, kind of water down these proposals when there is so much desperation clearly out there?
This is a fascinating question that you could ask about the Democratic Party on a whole range of issues. I mean, I don't see what the benefit. Well, certainly, if you mean voter, I mean, party voter would greatly benefit from this kind of robust economic relief. There, so many average people in the country are suffering right now. It would be good politics to offer them real relief. But Biden, for whatever reason, whether it is out of fealty to the corporate donors that he has served his whole life, or whether it's because he's afraid of being tarred a socialist. Obviously, that was what the Republican anti-Biden campaign was focused on, was saying that the Democrats are all controlled by these socialists. And so what smacks of socialism more than giving everybody $2,000 a month check, or offering them financial relief from debt or from rent and mortgages? I mean, maybe he's afraid of being attacked from the right, which is a fear that he's had his entire career. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me, though, why it is good politics to give people money. That tends to lead people to like you when you give people money. And the party, I mean, I think that who knows what could have changed the outcomes of the 2020 election, whether or not the Democrats could have won a more overwhelming victory, whether they could have more clearly gained more seats in the House and more clearly taken back the Senate. If who knows, it's all just speculation, but I have a very strong hunch that this election would have looked a lot different if the Democrats had staked their entire election on their insisting that they were going to be a party that was going to provide that kind of relief to people, and they didn't do it, and didn't work out too well for them.
Yeah, especially when it's so clear the contrast, right? It's such a big difference. A big thing that we are obviously all looking forward to is some of the positive news about this vaccine that's coming out, but of course that doesn't come without its downsides, because we are dealing with the big pharma here, and some of these probably, I'd say, the most promising vaccine is by Pfizer, and they have been very, very clear about accepting no public money so they can maybe turn around and really raise prices. Do you worry about the accessibility of this vaccine when it comes to getting it to the Americans who need it most, and maybe people having a lot of, whether it be insurance or high cost barriers to pay?
In general, this pandemic has shown for everybody, in case anybody needed additional demonstration, how insane it is to run a health system on the private profit motive, because the incentives of the system are to make money rather than to keep people healthy. We didn't need the coronavirus to show us this, but certainly the pandemic has yet again driven that home, and in fact suggested that the running a system on this kind of model is dangerous from a public health perspective, precisely because you have to ask the kind of questions that you just asked about things like vaccine provision. I mean, this should be a pretty straightforward thing. There should be a publicly controlled health system that handles the research and development for a vaccine and develops it in the public good, because I think we all agree that that this is a public health crisis, like public in the real sense of the term. And so there should be decisions made about how to fight it that best benefit the public. And when you have multiple vaccines being developed by gigantic pharmaceutical companies that have in mind, at the end of the day, they don't exist to serve the public good, right? They at the end of the day, they don't develop a vaccine for the coronavirus because they best want to fight the coronavirus. At the end of the day, their incentive is to make gobs of private profit for their executives and shareholders. So this is an insane way to. I mean, the very fact that we have multiple vaccines being developed at the same time. I mean, I was listening to I think maybe Brian Lehrer's show on WNYC the other day, and I think he asked one of his guests, well, there are three vaccines in development right now. Do you worry that people are going to say, well, I only want this vaccine because I read this article about it? But rather than just having one vaccine that everybody gets, they're going to sort of haggle over consumer choices. What an insane question. Why? Yeah. That's not the most efficient way to develop a vaccine. There should not be competition driving who can come up with the best vaccine fastest, quickest. Like this should be a public project that we're all invested in and that our public resources are funding. There's going to be all kinds of grotesqueries that come out of the fact that we have to. I mean, there are already all these grotesqueries that come out of this fact, right? And I always come back to the idea that, like, in a moment like this, we need to be able to depend on a public health system. When people get sick and are worried that they have coronavirus, they should be able to contact health officials and doctors, nurses, etc., seek treatment when they need it. Not doing so will mean the greater spreading of this plague that we're in the middle of. But people, after decades of, after never having had a public health system, after never experiencing what it's like to have a system that exists to serve their needs, people associate, myself included, going to the doctor with having to shell out enormous amounts of money that they don't have. So this is the wrong mentality that you want to have when you're in the middle of a pandemic like this. And we've seen. I have no scientific data to back this up, but I'm positive that is part of the reason why we still have such an enormous spread of the virus at this point. The worst in the world. Because people are so conditioned to see the health system as a way to extract more and more money from them, rather than as something that exists to serve their needs.
Yeah, it is definitely and when you have a system like that, it's so tough to kind of get in the mindset to demand more and kind of push for change in a better way there. Do you want to switch gears a little bit from this virus to the administration that really kind of oversaw a lot of all the chaos, which is the kind of Trump administration and the transition? We'll talk a little bit about that. And one of the biggest topics over the last 20, 25 days or so has been obviously from the results of the election coming out, trickling in very slowly, this fear kind of a coup attempt or some type of attempt by Trump to overturn the election results. What do you make of the kind of response to that, and what response do you think, now that pretty much it's over, is appropriate? Are you one of these kind of people who says, "Oh, it's kind of something to laugh at, it's not really a big deal," or is it something? Do you think that speaks to a broader, more serious problem?
Well, if you pay any attention to anything, certainly to any of the quote unquote coup attempts, it's really. It is not possible not to just crack up at the sort of Keystone Cops style attempt to, launching the latest volley in your attempt to declare a coup and declare martial law from the, Four Seasons landscaping in the outskirts of Philadelphia. I mean, nobody can take that particularly seriously, and we should laugh at it because it is absurd. On the other hand, clearly what was wrought by 4 years of Donald Trump should be terrifying to people.